Digital Audio Health by Symatrax.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you believe that there is more to life than what you see right now and you want to find out more, listen in as her guests share their journey and their extraordinary experiences. Now, here is your host, Rhonda Grant.
Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show. Sometimes the universe has a way of placing people or obstacles in your path to help guide and direct you on your mission. Listen in as we discover the path my guest has traveled. Has she been inspired by a calling, crafted her journey, or a bit of both? I invite you to embrace the conversation and to use it to help you to recognize if this is happening in your life. Our guest today is Barbara Daoust, Success Mindset, Strategist, and Business Growth Accelerator. As a certified thinking into results consultant with Proctor and Gallagher Institute, Barbara shows entrepreneurs, small business owners, and leaders how to access exponential business results and embrace change as an opportunity for growth. It is Barbara's passion to help people get out of their own way, break out with procrastination, say goodbye to perfectionism, and stop postponing the life of their dreams. When you work with Barbara, you'll learn how to engage your creative mind and utilize your most powerful tool, your imagination. Welcome to the Rhonda Grant Show, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me again, Rhonda.
It's my pleasure. We're going to have a wonderful journey together. I know that you help people with their dreams, desires, and goals. Can you share about your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so ironic to me that I'm in, a later phase of my life, let's put it that way, and that I never understood the real importance of goals or designing a future or creating a roadmap toward achievement. Now in my past, I was in the entertainment business for 30 years. I ran a theater company in San Francisco. I've got a degree in theater, and I have a master's in directing from UCLA. And I ran a theater company. I had a show at the Kennedy Center. I had success, but I was always living kind of just gig to gig and deciding what was next. But I didn't have a real understanding of creating a vision for my life or a vision for my company, and really aiming for some strategic milestones in order to create a bigger picture, whether it was growing my company so that there were more people involved that I could pay, a stronger team. I had no concept of that. I just had a desire. I just had a desire, kind of like Edmund Hillary wanting to climb Mount Everest. He didn't know why he wanted it. He just knew he wanted it. And that's kind of the way that I lived my life. It would be, well, I want to direct this show, and so the next 6 months, it would be focused on, a project. So I had a concept of understanding deadlines and creating productions and events, but I didn't have an overall perspective of a vision of how I could really have greater impact in the world. So I just, really just followed the next lead, the next lead, the next lead, the next lead. And then even after I graduated from UCLA with my master's in directing, I thought I was going to teach at the university level. That's why I went and I got my master's, so that I could have a steady income, or some stability. And for a year, I applied to over 250 universities, and I did not hear back from one university.
Yes.
And I was really in a conundrum of, how am I going to survive? And what am I going to do? So I took odd jobs. I worked at a talent agency. I worked at a law firm, and everything was making me more and more miserable. My choices were not defined. They just weren't defined. And then I just happened to have the good fortune of being called to interview with the Olsen twins.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Olsen twins, they were 7 years old at that time. And I just had a certainty that this was my next direction. And I ended up working with them for 10 years. So I got to travel the world. I got to work on, many sets. And I also established an acting academy for young professionals here in Hollywood. And again, even with my acting academy, it was always just, well, the next series of classes, the next series of classes. I didn't have a vision. I really didn't understand business,
Mm-hmm.
because I was an artist with a struggling artist mentality and just being grateful for any kind of breadcrumbs that came my way. When I started working with the twins, it was a big raise in salary from working in the theater to working in film. And I started to feel more relaxed as a result of that, because I never had my focus on money, Rhonda.
Mm-hmm.
I was just driven by, what's the next production I'm going to be involved in? And even money wasn't even on, on the plate. I did teach 25 drama classes a week in order to sustain myself. And I was a California artist in artist in residence, a California artist in residence for the California Council. And but I was the drama teacher who was selected, to go to all these schools in the Bay Area and San Francisco. And I was just, doing 25 classes a week, producing and directing for my theater company at night, and then directing, for other companies as well, and co-producing with other companies. And really, it wasn't until I collapsed
Yes.
that, it was a wake-up call. Also, when I went to the Kennedy Center, and what I was paid, the remuneration for that was so low, but I was just in a place of always being just grateful that I could work, but not realizing I was on a hamster wheel of, not making more money, and just, continually seeking, how am I going to do my art and survive, real survival mentality. And once I got into, doing more film work, and I was really working toward directing on TV and film sets. At that time, though, it was more challenging for women. I can also say it's challenging for men as well. But at that time, there were a lot of obstacles in the way that were gender related. And, I just kept trying, until one day, it was 2 months before my 25th wedding anniversary, that my husband died suddenly. And we had been together for 28 years, and we had lived our lives together in the theater world together. And then I just collapsed again. I just was, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why him?
Yes.
One of the most amazing creative people I have ever met in my life. One that it was, we were joined at the hip, and he was really my soulmate. But what I discovered was I went on a journey. To find me, because I discovered that I really didn't know how to love myself, that I had been codependent without realizing I was codependent, that my value was always affirmed by my late husband, who always held me up, who always supported me, who always guided me, who always encouraged me, who always said, you can do this, you're so talented, and go for it. And, and his belief in me is what I lived on. And then I had this time where it was me, and it was me alone. And I discovered as well that I'd been living my whole life seeking approval outside of myself, and not knowing my own self-worth, not knowing my own self-value, not having the self-esteem. I didn't even realize. I thought if somebody had said to me that I lacked confidence, or I lacked self-esteem, or I lacked self-love at the time that I was on this journey, I would have said, what are you, nuts? You're talking to somebody who feels very confident, who's a director, who knows what she wants. But I again, didn't know what I know now. And I often say to people, if I knew then what I know now, I'd be retired on an island. I'd have, the wealth that I didn't even dream of wealth at the time. I didn't even dream of having money. I didn't even dream of having a bigger capacity so that I could give back or help people or grow people, or and even if somebody was in need, that I could give unconditionally. I had lived my life with conditions, and then it became a journey of why was change so complicated. And after I lost Patrick, my support system started to really die as well.
Right.
I use that word because that's what it felt like, and that's exactly what happened as I discovered a different version of myself. I found a year later, I found Patrick's mother dead in her apartment, and then my father died, my best friend died, and my brother-in-law died jumping out of a plane, and his parachute didn't open. So I had all of this within 2 years. And I spent really the next 3 years looking at ways to join them on the other side.
Okay. That's too bad.
It was part of the journey. And now I can understand. I so understand, the devastation of loss, and when your world collapses, and when you are not at choice. So in the work that I do now, there are 2 ways that we change. And one way is bam, through a traumatic event or an ecstatic event, right? And then your world capsizes or your world becomes elevated. And then the other way that we change is through, constant spaced repetition of a new idea, of a new plan, of a new goal, of going after a dream, and staying consistent with who do you have to be in order to achieve that new identity, that new version of yourself, that higher version of yourself, the next level version of yourself. And the way that I do that with my clients now is through designing the vision and designing, who do you have to be in order to get closer to closing that gap between where you are and where you want to go.
And our guests might not know what you mean about this version of yourself and another version, because if they are the same version of themselves for their whole life, and let's say it's a woman who's going into menopause, if she could know that there is another version of her waiting on the other side of that, I mean, that would be exciting, right?
Yeah.
And so can you speak to that version? Because a person may not know what has to happen to get to that new version.
Yeah. Great question, Rhonda. I'm talking, and it's recently more than ever, talking to a lot of women and men, 55 and older,
right,
who are experiencing the next chapter in their lives, but they're also feeling scared, worried, insignificant, not knowing, because like retirement is coming. And I say to people, it's time to rewire and never retire. So,
awesome.
It's really about because I believe, spirit is constantly moving to and through you, forever seeking fuller expression and expansion. And it's when we're growing that we feel alive. And so now I even take a lot of my acting, coaching, and directing background and encourage people to get into the feelings, of living life, the spirit of life, and growing just as a flower is growing toward the light, and that the cycle of life doesn't just end because you retire, so to speak, right? And it's to create that new version of yourself is to go, the work that I do with people is we go after a goal or a dream, because I say to people, there's a dream inside of you and it's not going away, and it never has gone away. So let's explore that. And as my mentor, Bob Proctor, would say, more dreams are buried in the graveyard because people tiptoe safely to their death. And it's that safety zone or lack of awareness of what it takes to get out of the comfort zone of the identity of what you already have. So I provide for people an awareness and tools of what it takes to create that new version, that new identity, that future self, because you can connect the dots going backwards. It's more challenging to connect the dots going forward. And it takes imagination. And that's what I'm really, excited about when I work with people. It's like, let's inspire the imagination, work with this, God-given gift that we all have and fantasize. And then when you identify something that really scares you and excites you and lights you on fire, and you make a decision and a commitment. And that's why the groups that I have, we do a 90-day sprint. We're together for 3 months. And in those 3 months, it's a high commitment level. Once you've chosen what that goal or dream is that you're aiming for, then it's up to you to become the torpedo to aim in the direction of that mark. But if you're going after something you already know how to do, you're not going to meet that new version. You're not. And I say to people, you probably don't know who you really are, and you never will, until you discover the parts of yourself you haven't yet met. Right?
Beautiful.
So how do you discover those parts? It's not going to be going after something you already have done or already know how to do. So it's pushing outside the comfort zone. It's deciding that, like I worked with a woman who was 72 years old who wanted to lose weight. And I said, you know how to lose weight. You know how to go to the gym. You know how to hire a trainer. You know how to eat better. And then when I found out a little bit more about what excites her in her life, she told me that she really admired this 86-year-old bodybuilder. I think her name is Ernestine Shepherd. And I said to her, okay, so why don't you look into joining a bodybuilding competition? And, she pondered and then came back and said, I'm in. Said, okay, so you're not committed yet until you find a bodybuilding competition for your age category. You have the date and you pay for it. You sign up. So once she committed to signing up, now starts the journey of who do you have to be to get to that place. And that's where consistent dedication and action starts to happen. So she ended up at the gym every morning at 5 o'clock. She can hold a plank longer than her trainer. And, she's 72 years old. She bought her pink fuchsia bikini. She started to see herself. And there's like visualization is powerful when you use your imagination but how do you create more than what you already know? There has to be stimulus. There has to be inspiration, whether it's pictures that you get on the computer, whether it's you see somebody else you admire in a certain environment, whatever it is that stimulates you to go outside what you already know. And then it's about the dedication of, well, who do you have to become? So she bought her pink fuchsia bikini and her tanning spray. Now it's moved from visualization to what is called motor imaging. And motor imaging is when you start to act it. You start to be it by wearing it, right? Just like the actor's role. The best actors are the ones who believe they are the character. And so once she started playing around with the tanning spray, then she starts playing with body positions, and then her whole body is activating. So this is what's called association. We get associated with the character. And a lot of people will say, that's fake it till you make it. And it's like, not really. You've got to know that you are the designer. And I say to people, design your messy, because as you're designing, let's say the next step that might not be perfect, are you okay with making mistakes? Are you okay with failure? And are you okay to say, I'm going to give it a shot anyway. I'm going to learn who I am in that, at that level. And then once you get there, and if you look at it as a failure, you're probably going to go back to what you already know. But if you look at it as, I designed this, I'm moving in this direction. I know I'm not going to be perfect when I get here. And I might even have, a pie in my face. I might feel humiliated. I might be really embarrassed, whatever it is, but I've designed it. And when you've designed it, I say to people, you have a modicum of control.
Mm-hmm.
It's your life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you get to that place, and now you've got a decision. Where do you go from here? So now she's got her pink fuchsia bikini, and she's got her tanning spray, and she starts practicing her pose, and she's at the gym, right? And then to get to the next level, then it's, does she hire somebody to coach her in the competition? What does she start watching more videos? What's going to be inspiration, to keep on building the image? And that's why I say self-image controls everything.
Mm-hmm. You really hit on something that's really commonplace, is that people are afraid of failure.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, our schools, it's easy to feel like a failure in schools if your marks aren't good and all of that. And so we grow up being very careful with the choices that we make. Like, people are very afraid sometimes to even make a choice, even when they know it's the right choice. So it's really hard for people, I think, to commit to themselves and believe that what they feel that they have lacked or they wanted to do that they haven't done, and the years keep ticking by, that failure is standing in the way of them self-actualizing the true essence of who they've come here to be. And something that you said that I really like, I've heard you say this, is it's the invisible side of success. So what is that invisible side of success? Have I said that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. Well, again, everything is energy, and everything has a frequency, and everything is vibrating. Even the desk that doesn't look like it's moving is vibrating, right? So we're in a universe of interfacing with frequencies. And so we all have a frequency. We have a signature frequency.
Right.
And so it's really to understand that the invisible side of success, and this is where, modern medicine has, a lot of good to it, but a lot of treatment is not dealing with the invisible side, which is energy.
Okay.
Right? And energy is, we're still living in a world of Newtonian physics where it's all about the mechanics of being human, and let's use a pill and let's use a chemical. And yes, there is the mechanics of being human, but the invisible side of success is the unseen. There's so many frequencies that our eyes cannot see. There's about, I don't know what it is, 99.9% of the frequencies out there that we cannot see, with the human eye. And all of those frequencies have impact. And so the invisible side of success is when you focus your mind, because mind, again, is energy. Mind is an activity, and the body is the movement of the mind. And a lot of people are using the same mind that they have to create change. But it's really about, how do you create a new mind to impact the body, to accept the command, let's say, to move into a new action, a new desire. And to focus energy is our biggest power. The purpose of the conscious mind is to focus and choose. And so as energy is coming to us, like we have, what is it? They say 70,000, 80,000 random thoughts coming through our minds every day. And most of those, I think about 85 to 90% of those are the same ones we had yesterday.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So people are they're either focused on a negative past or a negative future. So it's about creating right now. If you're going to create a positive future, you've got to bring that positive future into the now and use your imagination and your ability to focus on that picture, because subconscious mind interprets language into pictures, images, and images impact our emotional state. and we create through feeling. And that's what manifests, and that's what creates form in our outer reality. So it's the amount of desire that we drop in through repetition of a new idea, because a belief is just an idea we have over and over again that we accept as the truth. So if somebody in your family says that you're stupid and they keep saying that over and over and over again, you're going to probably believe it because it's got emotional impact, right? Because we don't go around saying to our kids, you read your book, I'm so happy, right? Yeah. And if we did do that, that emotional frequency would really highly impact the child. So a child that's raised with praise will have self-esteem, whereas a child that's raised with criticism, like most of us, and even in the educational system, we're going to avoid pain. So the way that we can start to use the invisible side is to create the dream, create the images, and fuse it with emotion, that it's yours to have and to say it, believe it, see it, feel it, because the feeling that we're always after at the end of it anyway, no matter what the goal is, it's not the goal, it's the journey. And if we want happiness at the end of it, it's how do you find and have happiness now and use the energy, because we can all, just like an actor, access happy right now. You have a happy thought, you think of something that you love, you feel love, we have the ability to access those feelings no matter where we are, no matter what we do, right? Even Viktor Frankl, in his book, The Man's Search for Meaning, after going through the Holocaust camps, and how he used his mind and positivity in order to create the feeling state inside of him in order to survive, right?
Survive, yeah.
Yeah. And so when we can really define, and it doesn't have to start out with like this really, really, really clear picture. It's about, are you listening to what excites you? Are you listening to what, has always turned you on? What are all the books that you have on your shelf? What are like the cues around you that say you're obsessed about this? It could be somebody who's obsessed about buying homes, right? Like you,
yes.
right? And so that's where you follow the energy of the desire, and then you can start designing. And I know that when I was at UCLA, I was called, I know now what I am, or what I was at the time. I didn't know it at the time,
right.
But I decided that when I went to UCLA, I had already been out of school for 10 years. And I decided that all my work was too perfectionistic and I was too obsessed with things being perfect.
Yes.
Painful when it wasn't perfect. And I had imposter syndrome, that I was not, if it just wasn't good enough, it was never good enough because I was never good enough. But I didn't know that I was being driven by that. I just knew that I was I wanted things to look perfect. So I made a decision that I would go to school, and I had the objective to fail and make mistakes and teach myself how to navigate through the waters of painful, experiences. And I didn't even know exactly why, other than I wanted to break up with perfectionism. And so I made choices. I chose productions that were so outside my comfort zone. And they were like, I didn't even understand what they were about, and I failed. I mean, the first 2 years, I almost got kicked out of UCLA, the middle of second year, because my productions were disastrous. Just disastrous. And I was like, oh, this is painful. But I was choosing productions with 30, 40 people, 2 weeks of rehearsal, and, trying to get everybody on board, new plays. It was a mess, Rhonda. But by the end of, I think, my second year, I produced and directed a show that became one of the biggest hits in UCLA history.
Wow.
And I went on to win the Best Director Award, the best production. I got scholarships. And then for my thesis production, I got everything I asked for and more surprises. And so it was a painful process, but I would never have met that version of me had I not leapt and stepped off that cliff and deliberately designed my messy.
Right. And so you said, break up with perfectionism. That is very powerful, because we need to break up with ourselves.
That's right.
And, and the crap that we're telling ourselves all the time. I don't really find a better word than that for it. But there's many things that we can break up with, right?
Absolutely.
Not only our boyfriends, or when our kids break up with us when they start to get a certain age and we become wounded and we go, oh my goodness, now I have to live without them because they have their own people. And I just find that it's very powerful because breaking up is painful.
Mm-hmm.
But you've just spun that it's positive because you're making yourself stop continuing with a behavior that's not serving you, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people, let's say they're just so overwhelmed by their vision. They're so overwhelmed by their dream because it seems like it's so big. And that's where you just choose one or two habits at a time, or one or two beliefs that you need to break up with.
Mm-hmm.
And, and give yourself, like, there's all kinds of studies done about the
Right.
neural pathways in the brain and creating new neural pathways from 30 days to 66 days, a London study, London University, to 90 days.
Yes.
Sometimes there's things for me that it takes a year to break up with the neural pathway, the groove, right? The road, the roadmap that's been created in the brain. And when you have awareness of the difference between the brain and the mind, then to strategize, spend 30 days on a new habit. And, and then at the end of a year, you'll need a telescope, as my mentor says, to look back at who you were. Every year, I keep doing my same program with people, and I've got people in my programs that have repeated the same program for 10 years. We're just
Wonderful.
doing the same program. We're just coming at a different version of ourselves every time.
Yeah.
So we see the program differently, and we see the work differently, and we see ourselves differently. And that's because as we move forward to this realization, we're selecting milestones, right? And going after something that's still scary to go after, whether or not it's making 10 phone calls a day and committing to following up on that. Whether or not, I work with a lot of financial advisors who have to make like 30 phone calls a day and cold calls. And we play games to trick the brain, so that, it's not about suppressing your feelings. It's not about saying, oh, I don't feel scared. It's about acknowledging the feelings, feeling the feelings, and identifying what's the story behind that feeling. What's the belief behind that feeling? Here's an example. Like if I wanted to say, I want to produce a Broadway show, I have everything in the world and the experience to be able to do that if I really, really, really wanted to do that. But when I think about what's the biggest fear that comes up for me, the biggest fear is I don't like asking people for money. So if I don't like asking people for money, I probably am not going to produce a Broadway show. Right? So then to identify that, because that's part of why my so-called paradigm, it's part of my program. It's part of, I was raised that you don't ask people for help. You figure it out on your own. You do it on your own, right? You don't tell people your problems. You keep it home, right? And so, but you're going to go a lot farther when you get help, and when you get support, you're going to go a lot farther, a lot faster. And so if I identify that I have a fear of asking for money, then I can start to strategize that one of my new behaviors could be, asking people for money. Start smaller. So I might say, Rhonda, I left my wallet in the car. Would you mind buying my coffee today? And then when you say, sure, I'd love to. And would you like a snack with that? Or a piece of, a dessert or a cake with that? Right. And then I go, oh, I didn't die. The subconscious mind, when it goes into the unknown territory, it's protecting us.
Yes.
So that we, and it makes it feel like we're going to die in order not to change, right? Because subconscious mind doesn't like the unknown, but everything we want is in the unknown. Everything we want, everything. right? So how do you get to the unknown if you're going to keep holding on to the known? But it's those navigating those feelings of discomfort, humiliation. And look, we need fear. It's important to let us know that, one, we either have an error in our thinking, or two, there's a bear in the woods and we need to run.
Yes.
Right. So it's always about, for me, I don't like calling negative feelings negative. I like calling them contrasting feelings, because the contrast is just the other side of the pole. And which side do you want to focus on? So if I have these feelings of fear, and they're always going to keep coming up, it's just that the intensity starts to change.
The intensity starts to change. Yes.
Right. And you move to the next level of, well, now I'm going to ask somebody if they can pay for my parking. Right. So I've gone from, $8 to $20. Right. And then it's like, okay, so I want to support an animal in need. And so I'm going to enter, I'm going to ask people to help this animal. And that might be a little bit more money. And then I find, even what I practice as well is that when people are asking for money, I practice giving it. And then that way, the understanding of energy and flow and currency, right? Money is currency, money is energy, and how to allow oneself to get closer to the bigger vision is to get into these, micro steps. And then the milestone that has a level of discomfort.
Yes.
And then aim for it and say, I did it. I was working on a film with, do you know who Tara Lipinski is?
Mm-hmm.
And she won the gold medal in figure skating when she was 15. Yeah. And I was coaching her on a film in Montreal, where I'm from. And she would go to, the rink every morning at 5:00 before we started the film shoot. And I a couple of times went to watch her, and triple lux she would do: fall, crash, bam, up again, triple lux, fall, down, up again. Never complained, just knew that it was practice, right? And most of us stop because there's the 4 steps to learning, right? Whereas, like, you don't even know what you don't know, then you know what you don't know. And then it's about, are you willing to become that version of yourself through practice, through doing it again, picking yourself up and doing it again and picking yourself up. And then you're going to get to a different level of proficiency. And then you become an unconscious competent, where it's in your body and it becomes habitual because you're not even thinking about it. So it becomes part of your paradigm, which is just a fixed idea that, you are who you are. And now it's next level.
Just fabulous conversation here with Barbara Daoust. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Symatrex. And as you realize, I'm speaking with Barbara Daoust. How may people reach out and contact you? Because this mastermind that you have sounds very, very exciting and rewarding.
Oh, thank you. People can reach out on my website and book a session, a complimentary session to strategize with me and see whether or not it's a fit. And the program is, again, I've done a lot of programs, Rhonda. I've taken a lot of programs. I've taught a lot of programs.
Yes.
And I've coached a lot of people. But this particular program, called Thinking into Results, gets results. And I keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it. And it's 10 years now that I've been delivering this. And this is why I said there are clients that I have who have been doing it 10 years. And the growth that I see and the understanding and of self, as well as the actualization, the self-actualization, and people become, what's really wonderful, they become leaders of themselves. So they can go to barbaradoust.com and they can book a complimentary session with me. They can also go to thesuccesscode.com and download, if they want to opt in to be on my email list, download a success code script where they write out, a vision for their life. But I also add in, what are the feelings and what are the images? It's kind of like writing your script, your movie script.
Okay.
And when you can let yourself really identify feelings and start associating with those feelings, then it becomes your responsibility to daily access those feelings. Hold the images, but you can look at a baby and feel love. If you want love, let yourself feel love in many, many ways. And that's where, again, your frequency starts to change, and you will bring more of those like frequencies toward you.
Mm-hmm. Just wonderful. And I may add that you are in very good hands with Barbara Daoust, because I've worked with Barbara, and it's just amazing the care and genuineness she gives every client that she works with. Do you feel that you've been called? Do you feel that you've been called to your journey, Barbara?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Rhonda. It's I have always, even like, I didn't even understand as a child. I was a young performer. I never understood really why I even wanted that. And I think that I've been called. I love speaking on stage. I love inspiring. I love motivating people. And I was like that when I was 4. I was just this little, maybe bossy leader, telling people, and like, even in sports, I would get the trophy for best sportsman because I was always cheering people on to do, and I would get out of the way so that other people could do that. And I even saw for my whole life, I really worked with a lot of successful people, and I've helped a lot of people become successful. And it wasn't until the loss of my husband that I realized that I was doing it for everybody else, but not for myself.
Mm.
And so I think it's become more of a journey that as I'm helping people become successful and more successful, I too am walking my talk. I
Oh,
am
yes.
on the journey as well. I'm not just preaching, and I'm doing so that I can have the growth within me as well. And it's not about comparison with anyone else. It's really about just making a decision for oneself. And I would say that my calling has been to lead people to lead themselves.
Wonderful. What a wonderful calling. What extraordinary discovery have you found in your life?
I think the most extraordinary wake up call for me was, again, seeing that I wasn't designing on the inside out. And that as I started to learn more about that, it became so much more clear to me why self-image was so important. And self-image, you'll never outperform your self-image. You'll never outperform what you already know. So how do you find those parts that you don't know? And it really is through that self-image, how you see yourself, how you talk to yourself. What's your innermost dialogue? Are you committed to what's working versus what isn't working? How are you showing up? What is, how are you, what are you wearing? So there's an outer image as well as that inner image, and that is what controls everything. So as I like to say, habits and behavior equal your personal reality, which is your personality.
That is just wonderful. I really like that. That is wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we begin to wrap up?
Yeah, I would say that, positive thinking isn't, oh, everything's great, everything's grand. Oh, I can say, only look at the good. I say positive thinking is really, really useful and helpful, but it's about, are you in the solution versus are you in the problem? And can you look at the problem as an obstacle, as a challenge that you're willing to take on because you've got your resources, or you've got other people that you can ask for help, or you've got a whole plethora, of solutions out there. And can you be a seeker in order for you to live the best version of yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, there you have it from Barbara Daoust. Very passionate, professional, persistent person that I know. It's such a joy to know you. And I hope to have you back on the show again, Barbara.
It's always a pleasure, Rhonda, because back at you, such a pleasure to know you and all that you do and all the people that you inspire, is and witnessing you do that is just really exciting.
Thank you very much. Theme song for the Rhonda Grant Show is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by my friend John Park Wheeler. This is Rhonda Grant with the Rhonda Grant Show, author of Magical Forces Within, Extraordinary Discoveries in an Ordinary Life, inviting you to look for the magical forces within yourself today and every day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rhonda Grant Show with your host, Rhonda Grant. If you would like to find out more information about Rhonda and her upcoming guests and the work that she does, go to her website, rhondagrantauthor.com. That's rhondagrantauthor.com.
Digital Audio Health by Cymatrax.